Hey everyone, Dr. Rob here. I want to take a moment to spotlight my sponsors, Professional Co-op, empowering clinicians with premium access to top-tier lab services at a fraction of the cost. Since 2001, Professional Co-op has redefined what efficient, patient-centered support should look like. No hidden fees, no minimums, and you only pay for completed tests. It's lab access made simple, transparent, and affordable. Trusted by licensed healthcare professionals across the country, Professional Co-op is your strategic partner in delivering high-quality care. Discover more at www.professionalco-op.com. As a practitioner, I only use products I believe in, and Nutridyne is at the top of that list. What I love about Nutridyne is their unwavering commitment to quality, transparency, and science. Their products are practitioner exclusive, which means they're built specifically for clinical use. That matters when you're trying to get real results. From foundational support to condition-specific protocols, I've seen firsthand the difference Nutridyne makes in my patients' health and in my practice. Hey, everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman here, Proven Health Alternatives. I've got superstar Dr. Eric Fete. He's a fitness physician. He's certified in bioidentical hormone optimization, wellness, weight loss. And as you can see, he's a founder of PrimeX weightloss.com. He lives in Ohio, so we're going to match Northeast and Midwest, and we see who speaks quicker today. Dr. Fete, my pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Rob, thanks, man. I appreciate for you have me on, and I'm a big fan, and I appreciate the time, man.
We're going to have some fun. We're going to share some leading insights into this hormone and weight loss. There's so many questions, but there's a lot of hormone myths. So there are several misconceptions. Number one, particularly for women, can you address this for me? Hormone imbalance is always evident in women.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so many myths with women. Yes and no, it's not always evident. One of the big ones is PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome is very common with women, and it's not always evident. Sometimes, it's one of those that one of my mentors told me, like, every woman has it until you prove otherwise. So always go looking for it. But yeah, no, it's not always evident, and I guess we'll probably dig into some more myths with women, but there's a lot of them, like women don't need testosterone, or if you've had your uterus taken out, you don't need progesterone, or they don't need anything. There's a lot of myths out there, but those are big ones.
So here's another one for you. Menopause is the only significant hormone change that a woman has. Oof.
Oof, yeah, that's a big one. No.
Stress doesn't significantly affect women's hormones.
My goodness. Yeah, stress is probably one of the top ones that affects it, men and women for sure, as you probably know as well. I find that more and more today, more than ever. I mean, we're deluged with, Wi-Fi and work and social media and, toxins in our food and our water supply. And, we're constantly being bombarded with physical stressors, emotional, mental, spiritual. So I think it's bigger than ever. It absolutely affects all your hormones and your weight and mental health and everything else for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about hormones and menopause and all the different stages of menopause because, it's a real concern for women, let's say 40 to 55, if we could characterize that 15-year transitional phase. It's difficult on the men because a lot of men just don't understand that this is a legitimate thing. The women are really having this tremendous slippery slope, this wave of hormones. So could you address it in a manner where people would really understand it and things that they would need to do to avoid the pitfalls of the hormonal change?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, with women, it definitely, going back to the first question about hitting them before menopause, women get into perimenopause, what we call kind of no man's land. And I'm seeing, as you are probably, men and women, younger, having hormonal issues at a younger and younger age. Before, heck, I remember, 10 something years ago, you typically would see guys or women having hormonal issues and they're not until their 50s and 60s or older. Now I'm seeing it in 20s and 30s, for crying
Mhm.
out loud. And then a lot of that goes back to what we were just talking about with stress and the crappy environment we live in, and everything else. So yeah, younger and younger. So for women, definitely even before perimenopause, with everything they've got going on with stress, and if they're having children, and a lot of women are on birth control pills for years or decades, and that can definitely affect their hormonal milieu and their body composition, their mental health, and things like that. That can skew things and throw things off. And not to mention all the other synthetic meds and drugs and things like that that they're put on and stuff. And, then they get into perimenopause and they start gaining weight, they feel tired, and then they get put on Prozac and, statins and, told to eat less and all this. And it just gets worse, So, yeah, so there's a lot of things affecting that roller coaster.
So give me three serum tests that you would recommend for people to, or for women to ask their primary care physician, their OBGYN to take, and then give me three lifestyle supplemental changes you would recommend. We're in the power of three today, buddy.
The power of three, I like it. Awesome. Cool. That's a tough one though, because there's more than three for sure. But so blood work, notoriously, underdone or misdone, I should say, if that's a word. But biggest one I think would be like a complete thyroid panel. A lot of times traditional doctors getting a TSH or maybe a total T4, T3. So get the full thing, TSH, free T3, free T4, thyroid antibodies, that kind of stuff. And get your hormones, all of them. Testosterone, free testosterone, estradiol, progesterone, DHEA, SHBG. Those are rarely done in traditional medical practices. So I think they should all be picked up on. As you probably know, thyroid is a big one that's misunderstood, misdiagnosed, and mistreated. Big one for sure. Lifestyle, man, that's a tough one. I think I'm a big superhero guy, so I always talk about, superheroes and like, Superman has his red S, so I call it the double S, sleep and stress. Those are probably one of my top twos because, like we were just talking about, everybody's stressed and most people just don't sleep enough. We're staying up all night playing on their phones and their devices, their circadian rhythms are big out of line. So I'm big on the whole, circadian rhythm, quantum biology aspect, getting outside, getting sun in your face, that night flipping the switch and getting things dim and cooler. Nobody's doing that, and it's really messing up our biology, and it affects our hormones and it affects our neurotransmitters in our brain. So sleep and stress are big. Movement and diet are, I know it's more than four, but I think if you had to focus, I'd want people sleeping, de-stressing, and moving every day. Diet's another one, but too many of us are doing what we're doing. We're sitting, people in front of screens all day. We're ordering, food from afar. We don't have to leave our house and staying inside in the stale environment with artificial lights all day. I think we need to get back to nature, get outside, move constantly throughout the day, eat real food and be active. Look at the healthy peoples in other cultures. That's what they do. They're outside all day. They're interacting with others in a social manner, not on this damn thing. And, getting out in the sun, the fresh air, and they're moving their bodies all day. That's what we're meant to do.
Yeah, fascinating suggestions. There's a bevy of things to do, and I'm sorry that I gave you the power of three. I really didn't mean to
I love
limit
it.
you, but again, I got a buddy of mine who always watches it and listens, and I really appreciate his support. And he's an Oxford grad, but he makes really good points. Hey, guys, make sure you land the plane and give digestible takeaways. So if you
Right.
gave them that list of 7 to 10, which is what they would really get when they come in for a consult with you or I, that would be great. But on a podcast, we got to keep it tight. So much
Yep.
so, you talked about hormone levels. So there's normal, which is what would be okay for the population, which you would get from a standard Western medical doctor. There's optimization levels where you're really optimizing your health. And then there's the range, what I like to refer to as the equivocal. It's in between everything, but it's where you and I live because it's not addressed. It's not bad, it's not good. It's harboring on okay. So could you pick that up for me? Take that baton and go.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. I think traditionally most people think normal, and I always like kind of relate it to like classroom grades that everybody's familiar with. You could pass a class with an A or a B or a C or a D, and most people are like a D. So like a testosterone test, it's whatever 300 to 1,000, so they're 302 and they're quote unquote normal, right? But that's they're definitely not optimal. Same with all the hormones. So you and I probably want our patients to be optimal, so at least the middle third or upper third or higher. But everybody's different, right? Everybody responds at different levels. So I want definitely at least the midpoint or higher to be optimal. And what's optimal for them is what's important because, I see this a lot where especially guys are just stuck on that number. They're like, doc, shouldn't I be, 1,000 or shouldn't I be this? Or, hey, doc, my number moved 5 points, and like, dude, don't worry about how do you feel. I feel great. Okay, well, don't worry about it. Everybody's different. It's like, so it's really about, again, treating the patient, not the number. So, but, so I just use that together. Number one, how do they feel? How are they responding? Any side effects? And then I correlate that with the numbers. It's so putting the two together, but optimal is definitely different from normal for sure. And some things, a lot of people are like, you have to control this or raise this or lower that. And again, everybody's different, but in general, the ones you want to optimize are the ones we talked about, the testosterone, the thyroid, DHEA, etc. And there's some you have to control. A lot of times like cortisol gets or insulin gets demonized, like it's bad. You got to lower it, lower it, lower it. I'm like, well, not always. Sometimes you want cortisol high, you want insulin high at certain times. It's about the timing. So you want to basically have the right time. It's all about the timing. In the morning, your cortisol should be higher. When you're working out, it should be higher. Insulin after you eat, it should be a little higher. If you want to put on mass, you want to optimize your timing of your nutrition and your workouts to get that anabolic spike. So it's not that it's bad, but too much or too much all the time. Like we are talking about stress. If we're stressed all the time, our cortisol is always high. Well, that's not good, but it's not necessarily evil. I see that a lot on social media. It's like cortisol bad, SHBG bad, insulin bad. Like, no, not necessarily. It's like water can be bad if you drink too much of it, right? But it's all
Sure.
about timing, more than anything. So
So interesting, you lead in when we talk about testosterone. Part of me wants to say, what are the right ranges? Because we hear 4 to 700, 6 to 900, but
right.
I gather you're saying it's an individual thing, how you feel. So you may be 6 to 900, I may be 4 to 700, and my dad who's 94, you may be satisfied with 200.
Right. Yeah.
And the question is, do you think that they are it's a little bit of a leading question. I do apologize, but we want to be a little controversial. Do you think that these numbers are being changed and manipulated a little to find a spot so more men want to or have the ability to take the TRT?
It's a great question. I think they have a lot of the labs. I think a lot of it has to do with the labs and the normative values and how they're being interpreted. It's like I feel a lot of the ranges have changed or been changed to accommodate, ill people. And this that the numbers for like testosterone have been changed. They've been lowered over the years, right? They used to be, 300, 400 to over 1,000. Now they're down to like, well, maybe it should be like 200 to 800. They're kind of like the airplane seats. Let's make them bigger, right, to accommodate bigger people, right, kind of thing, right?
Right.
And not necessarily a good thing. I don't think we should be changing that. I think back in I forget what it is, and I read something this is decades ago. The ranges used to be like shoot up to like 1,500 or something like that on testosterone. I can't remember now, but it was so they've definitely changed. But again, I think it is individual, and I think again symptoms come first, and sometimes it's hard to tell because with men especially there's genetic variability, right? They have on their genetic code it's a what they call a CAG repeat, a CAG repeat of your DNA that if it's long or short, that can tell them how much testosterone they need. The guys with the different lengths need, I believe if it's shorter, repeat, they need more testosterone, vice versa. I might have that backwards, but based, and there's no real way to test for that other than clinical symptoms. So, but the bottom line is, based on genetics and metabolism, things like that, some guys may walk around at 400 and feel fantastic, and other guys feel like total crap. They don't feel good until they're up to 900 or 1,000 or whatever. So that's where that clinical correlation comes in because there's no way to know their genetics on that specific variable. So there is a big range, but that's why again it comes into how you're feeling, how you're responding, etc.
The sidecar to what you said, the idea that testosterone has dropped in recent memory, it's true. So as we all know, muscle mass is the longevity organ, it's the
Yep.
currency of longevity, all that. What do you attribute to the fact that most men in our age brackets are having lower testosterone and loss of muscle mass?
Yeah, yeah. I think we're like we were saying. I think we're seeing that younger and younger nowadays, and it's hard to say for sure, but I attribute that to our environment, really. All the plastics, the phthalates, the BPA, the EMF exposure, the nutrients being depleted from our soil, all the crap in our food, Wi-Fi, like I said, living inside all day, stress, lack of sleep, staying up all night, playing on their phones. I think all these factors contribute to it. Is there causing things to mitigate our normal hormonal response and accelerate that decline compared to, our grandfathers, for example. They didn't have a lot of this. They lived in a completely different world back then. So more natural, more healthy, perhaps. So I think they didn't get that decline until much later. So I just attribute it. I really believe it has to do more with environmental changes and effects more than anything else.
So how long have you been a doc? There's a reason why I'm asking you this.
Gosh, over 20 years, 20 plus 25 something years, long time.
Right. Same here, 26 years. Would you say, now obviously you're a better doctor today than you were when you came out of med school, osteopathic school. Would you say in the last 20 to 25 years that the patients have more complexity or less complexity in the last 2 to 2.5 decades?
I think more. I think we're all seeing a rise in, autoimmune conditions, gut issues. We've all learned about the microbiome in the last, 10 years. We're still learning more about it. So I think it's definitely gotten more complex. Again, we live in a our environment has changed, in the last 20 something years for sure. Based on all the things we are just talking about. And of course, we all know about the debacle of, 5 years ago. I think that really messed a lot of people up with the shots and, all these other different things that messed up our immune system. So I think we're seeing a rise of all these, turbo cancers and autoimmune conditions and cancers. And there's a reason for that, right? We won't have to get into all that now, but I think there's a lot there. So I think overall it's making things more complex.
Without question, as you guys all know, I wrote a book, Immune Reboot. So I'm a big believer in the balance of the immune system. I think one of our biggest problems is we have an imbalanced immune system. Taking the next step, you've talked about a lot because did a lot of research on you before we got you to come on. I appreciate it. You talk about the idea of fat loss and muscle medicine, not muscle mass, but muscle medicine. So why don't you explain that idea of how muscle medicine leads to fat loss? And give me a couple of things you would do to improve my muscle medicine.
Yeah, for sure. So that's like a little phrase I came up with. I kind of trademark a little phrase of muscle medicine because I've just always been involved in health and fitness my whole life. And then when I got into medicine, longevity, et cetera, it seemed like a good fit. Because there weren't a lot of people talking about muscle as an organ or as an endocrine organ or as a muscle. More people now are talking about, like you said, muscle as an agent of longevity. So I kind of took that upon myself to that's my mantra now. It's muscle medicine. That's what I do. It kind of started like just as a something to niche down on to kind of be my focus and be my avatar. And but it really means a lot to me because personally and I feel that, like I said, it's been undervalued. So muscle basically is an endocrine organ. It's one of the largest ones in the body. And I think that part has been underappreciated. A lot of people talk about muscle as, of course, you can help you to move, right? It can help you look better, but it improves your insulin sensitivity. It can boost your metabolism and help with fat loss, but it does a lot more because muscle creates myokines, which are cytokines made by the muscle, which are little chemical messengers for your audience who is not aware. People are getting more aware of these cytokines. People talk about a lot of these inflammatory ones, the bad ones, like they call interleukin-6 or tumor necrosis, tumor necrosis, all these different cytokines. But myokines are made by the muscle, especially during exercise. So these myokines, like they have all these crazy names like irisin and IL-6 and IL-10, all these different names. But what they do is they almost act like little messengers, almost like hormones, where especially when you exercise, they secrete out and they go to different parts of the body to confer an effect. They can improve your bone mass, they can improve your brain health, improve your gut health, help improve your digestion, and all these other things. So basically, they can help you to live longer, improve your immune system, like you were talking about, and reduce inflammation. So it does a lot more than just help you handle blood sugar, which it does. So I think most people, if they focus on optimizing their muscle mass, kind of the rest will take care of itself because if you're building up your muscle mass and keeping it healthy and functional, it will of course increase your metabolic rate, improve glucose disposal, all these myokines, and it can help you burn fat, which will help you with body composition. But it'll also boost your brain health, your bone health, your gut health, and it does so many different things. So you can kill, a dozen birds with one stone, right? So I think it's an easy way to do it. And since we all tell people to exercise and this and that, it's just a good way to create a simple path. Like you said, what are those 3 actionable tips? Like lift heavy things, move every day. I think if you focus on helping your muscle be not just strong, not just look good in the mirror, be like a bodybuilder kind of thing, but really functional muscle, then a lot of these things will take care of himself. And it'll definitely help you lose body mass. One of my colleagues, Bill Campbell, he's big on fat loss, muscle body composition research, and his big, he says the same thing. Really focus on building up that muscle mass, and that'll help you burn the fat. A lot of people have been talking about that for years. The bodybuilders have talked about this for many, many years, right? John Perillo is a big on that, and all
Mhm.
these other people have been doing it for a very long time. But for me, I not just do it for the body aspect, but the longevity. So because of the myokines and all the things it could do for your brain and your bone, literally will help you live longer. So for me, it's just a good focus to hit on and really push on my patients.
I concur with you. I think the myokines are a hidden gem. It may be the secret sauce to our conversation. So when I mention cytokines to most people, everybody thinks that they're all pro-inflammatory. There
Right.
are 17 of them, 13 are pro-inflammatory, 4 are anti-inflammatory. The mitokine stimulates, as you so articulately said, interleukin 10, which is an anti-inflammatory cytokine, and it also conversely decreases interleukin 1 beta, interleukin 6, interleukin 8, and TNF alpha. So
Right.
it kind of covers both sides of the coin. So it behooves everybody, men and women, to lift weights.
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily mean we all have to look like Arnold, although I wouldn't mind walking around that way one day, every day, just out of curiosity, just see how
Right.
people would react to me. So
Right.
some of the supplements, as I segue, and I'm seating you for a peptide conversation. One of the supplements that I enjoy is creatine. Wrote my thesis on creatine. So I have
Nice.
some notes. Improve muscle strength and performance. Enhance brain health, especially in women. Potential benefits for bone density. Helps with mood and cognitive function. Really reduces fatigue because it enables you to go from ADP to ATP. So that is the then, the now, and the future. But I think the now and the future, a very crystal clear future, would be peptides, which are short chain amino acids. Now, you're an expert in peptide therapy. Which peptides do you want to talk about? And which peptides do you recommend for men? And which ones do you recommend for women? That's a loaded question, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to your first point about creatine, I agree 100%. I love it, and it's probably as one of the most well-studied supplements out there. I think people are finally picking up on that, not just for performance, but for brain health and cognitive function. So I agree. I think that's a fantastic supplement, very, very safe. So peptides, yeah, there's a couple hours of conversation right there, but there's a lot of them, and of course, we all know how the big bad FDA is trying to back in the fall try to take a lot of those away and playing the medical and political economic games with us back and forth. So there's a lot of controversy there. But I think more and more people, medicals and non-medical people, are being aware and talking about it now everywhere on social media. So a lot to do. And I'm always a big proponent of using the right peptides, getting them from pharmacies as opposed to you have to be careful a lot of these online places and things like that. So just there's a lot there, right? Which ones, there's so many. I think for me, there's several that I like. I mean, for many, many years, I've used a lot of the GHRHs or growth hormone releasing hormone peptides, the CJC ipamorelins, tesamorelin, sermorelin, for many, many years, especially combined with like BPC 157. I think most people are talking about that for healing, for repair, for gut health.
Mm.
Um, Another one I've been using a lot of off and on is, in addition to the BPC, is lorazepatide. It's a great gut health peptide because, like we were talking about earlier, so many people have gut issues nowadays.
Mm.
A lot of people with mold and, microbiome disruptions and gut health issues. So it's a really good one to help tamp down that inflammation in the gut, to seal that gut barrier and reduce an inflammatory mediator called zonulin can help with gut health. So that's kind of a cool one I've been using a lot off and on a fair amount the last year. But I think most people, to me, at least for me anyway, they're coming to me because they want to improve their body composition, they want to lose weight, feel better, look better, live better, live longer, stronger, better kind of thing. So I do like the what they call the GHRHs, GHRPs, and the BPC 157s. The thymolins are fantastic, thymosin alpha and thymosin beta, two different ones. You mentioned immune health. I agree. I think immune health and
Mm.
immunometabolism, a burgeoning area of research of late. I think more and more people are getting aware of it. So really, one of the first things almost always do is work on reducing inflammation, improving immune system function, because so many people have been affected in the last 5 years, right, with the immune system, with all the viruses and so on and so forth. So the thymosin alphas, the BPCs. The thymolins are fantastic for improving immune system modulation, improving immune system function. And sometimes it's a question of like everybody will like, well, I want to lose weight. I want to do this, but they're inflamed, their gut's a mess. They're not thinking. I'm like, look, I know you got to just be patient, but we have to reduce that inflammation, heal the gut, improve your immune system. Then we'll focus on the weight, right? As you probably see a lot too, you got to detox, you got to improve, get them healthy, and then the weight will come off. But so I think tamping down and improving that immune system function is a key thing. Sometimes it's hard to get people convinced of that because they want to lose the weight yesterday, right? So, but I think that's important. So there's a lot of other ones, but those are some of the big ones that I use a lot of.
The one that I had in my head, in addition, BPC 157, of course, Swiss Army knife of health, the Wolverine supplement.
Right.
I'm a big proponent because of its gut performing abilities, KPV.
Yep.
Some of the benefits of peptide therapy: improved athletic performance, weight loss, metabolic boost, reversal of aging effects, i.e., longevity, because isn't longevity our new anti-aging, which hasn't gone away over the last 3 years?
Right.
Some real positive effects on neurodegenerative disease and cognitive function as well. So, without question, peptide therapies are a promising field of research with enormous potential for extending health span, lifespan. Now, you're medical, I'm chiropractic, I can't pierce the skin, so I use a lot of oral peptides. So here are some of the positives for those who are looking for oral peptides. Enhanced convenience, you can get them in a good quality healthcare facility, improved bioavailability, reduced risk of side effects. And I found an enhanced patient compliance because, as somebody said this morning, that was an acupuncturist, there are some people that are actually afraid of needles.
Right?
Now, we're using the peptides in order to recover and train smarter. Why don't you give me your laundry list, your litany list of things so people can know how to train harder, smarter, more effective, and recover?
For sure. It's a big question. I find a lot of people need to focus on recovery. I always tell people to train hard but recover harder. I know a lot of people that just do too much, so overtraining and things like that. So kind of pulling them back and really focusing on recovery. So not only just strategic lifestyle, right? Taking time off, doing things like sauna, cold plunge, red light, the usual kind of other recovery tactics are great. Peptides can definitely be helpful for that. And we talked about the BPCs and the KPVs and the thymosins, et cetera, to help, boost repair, recovery, things like that. You mentioned creatine is great. And obviously some of the basic stuff that, collagen supplementation, nutraceuticals are fantastic. Our friend, we were talking about Michael Antonella has some great products on his site that can help with recovery. Even basic stuff like, alkalinizing, he's using things like Alka-Seltzer Gold or ketone esters are fantastic for it, kind of like almost like you said, like a Swiss Army knife, like reducing recovery, improving performance, so many different things. Like I do like the ketone esters, even though they're a little expensive, but
Mm.
I found a few that actually taste okay. So that's a good one. Optimizing NAD status, different things like that. So there's a lot of nutraceuticals that could be helpful, but a lot of times it's just the simple stuff, right? Just really taking some extra time doing deloads, cycling in your routines, making sure you're sleeping, and then doing some of those recovery strategies for sure. So, but biggest thing is on top of that would just be adequate fueling, right? Making sure that as especially with women, they're hesitant to really load up on protein or amino acids. So many people just need more protein, more amino acids, and just fueling their bodies, right? A lot of people want to just fast all the time, and they have to fuel your body. You got to give it what it needs, give it those amino acids, give it the collagen, give it the different things to heal and to recover. You can lift the weights, but if you're not resting, if you're not massaging and heating it up and eating the food, you're not going to build the muscle. So you have to recover.
I agree. I mean, I love the reference to the keto esters because I'm a big proponent of them because I know everybody says they're in or they're on the ketogenic diet and they're in ketosis, and you and I both know that that doesn't happen that often.
Right.
So the ketone esters are a great add. You mix that with MCT oil. Some of the things, and now I'm probably reiterating a lot of what you said, prioritize sleep quality, nutrition, clearly. I mean, that is the starting point. I mean, everybody would benefit from eating a more whole food diet, that active recovery, hydrate and fuel wisely, manage stress. A couple of modalities or devices, PEMF, low level laser, they're all going to stimulate healing within the body. Sleep, I mean, I think we need to cover sleep and circadian rhythm. I think that's our next chapter in our conversation.
Yeah,
So
for
why don't
sure.
you explain what circadian rhythm is, sleep, and how they need to be synced?
Yeah, for sure. I'm huge on that. I give everybody some strategies because like I said, I'm big on getting that circadian rhythm in alignment. I've been studying it in the last year, 6 months or more about all about quantum biology, really using the power of light, of water, of resonance, to heal the body and things like that. So I think I tell everybody like try to get outside, first thing in the morning, get out in the sun, look at the sun even if it's just cloudy, just getting the sun in your eyes. And it's not just, getting your feet in the ground, grounding, getting your earth bouncing it. It's great for reducing inflammation, promoting healing, managing stress. But looking at that sunlight gets through the retina into the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your brain and literally will get your hormones synced, right? It helps optimize your cortisol. And it actually will start the process of creating melatonin for later that evening so that you can sleep. So it's a 24-hour rhythm, right? So it's just getting that system in sync and then trying to get outside as much as you can during the day, not just to move, but to get some fresh air, get the sun in your eyeballs. Something to be said for UVA and UVB light. It's a good thing that the sun's been kind of demonized, right? And the whole sunscreen industry. And I think that's a mistake. I think that UVA and UVB are both beneficial for boosting mitochondrial function and helping your mitochondria to function better, to create energy, to create water. People talk about structured water in your mitochondria and your cells and this and that's, and it's new kind of a science, but I think there's something to that. But I think it can definitely help with mitochondrial biogenesis or creating better mitochondria. And of course, making vitamin D in your skin is the best way to do it. So I think that's a great way to start and complete your day. And at the end of the day, kind of doing the flip, right? Still thing getting outside, but on the opposite side, getting off these devices, putting everything in night shift mode, wearing the blue blockers, dimming the lights, trying to get off electronics an hour or two before bed because all that blue light screws up your melatonin production and increases stress. So I think really getting your body, getting that wind down. So many people, as you hear this a lot too, like I can't sleep. I'm tossing and turning, or I can't can't turn my brain off, right? How many people, say that? So I think that definitely helps. And that'll help you get into that deep restorative sleep. Because like I always tell everybody, like your day starts the night before. When you're getting that restorative sleep, it's important not just to sleep, but your body's rebuilding, it's recovering, your brain's detoxing, you're making growth hormone, you're making all your hormones at night to help you burn that fat and help you build muscle, all the things that everybody wants, but they forget about sleep. So if you're not sleeping, I could have the magic pill and it's not going to work. You got to sleep. So the circadian rhythm aspect is very, very important for that. So proper hydration, cellular hydration, structured water formation in your cells, et cetera, et cetera. But light is huge, so just like I said, just the sunlight is best. And then, for those people that need more, you could do the other modalities, whether it's red light therapy, infrared sauna, different things like that can help with healing, helping with mitochondrial function, helping with all the things we were just talking about. So I think those are easy things. Most of them are free, and everybody can do them every day.
To piggyback on what you said before, I've got a study here from Diseases periodical 2025. It talks about cortisol circadian secretion pattern. And if I could put the graph up, and we'll probably put notes so they can see the graph, it really talks at 6 a.m. There's this precipitous rise in cortisol. So
Yeah.
those people who live to about or sleep till about 8 o'clock, that poses a problem. And
Right.
most people I don't even have to ask you, I'm sure you're up by 6 a.m., if not before.
Yep.
So it's a fascinating thing what you talk about, but what does somebody do to attenuate the rise in cortisol because their sleep pattern is off?
Yeah, it's a great point. It's funny because I actually literally had a call with one of my patients about that the other day about their circadian rhythm, and I had her shift her schedule just 30 minutes, and now her daytime grogginess has improved. So it kind of depends on your pattern. Everybody has different sleep patterns or sleep cycles. They talk about the dolphin, the lion, the bear, based on your sleep patterns. Are you an early riser, late riser, this and that? But our ancestors, they're pretty smart, right? Go to bed when the sun goes down, get up when it comes up, kind of thing. And there's something to that. I think the science is starting to bear that out. So yeah, I think getting up in 6 o'clock in the morning or so when the sun's up is fantastic. And that cortisol spike, like you said, it's supposed to happen. Our bodies it's there to tell us to get the heck up and to get on with our day. So if you're sleeping through that, like you said, that can screw things up. So I think playing around with that shifting your schedule just a little bit might be helpful. Whether you might have to move it forward, a little bit backwards, but and I know some people have different work schedules and it makes it difficult, but best you can to sync it with the natural rhythms would be optimal.
So the number one question I'm getting asked from my colleagues, my male colleagues, is can I have a testosterone protocol? And I feel amiss that I didn't pin you down on one, but I'm going to give you the mic. It's an open mic. Share some suggestions, and they can be TRT, they can be supplemental. I've got my list here as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, it depends on your situation, right? Your age, your health status, things like that. So if you're younger, I mean, I think it's always best, as with everything, if there's an underlying issue, fix it. If you're not sleeping, you're eating the wrong, you're not exercising, obviously fix those first, right? It's the same thing with thyroid. If there's something causing it, you got hit with a viral infection, your gut's a mess. Let's fix that. And that may take care of it, period. You don't have to do anything else. Because if there's something holding back your testosterone production, your hormonal optimization, let's fix that. And it all comes to start with the basics. I always start with lifestyle, sleep and stress and diet. Are you eating whole food diet? Are you, avoiding all the bad stuff in terms of what you're eating? Are you lifting weights? Are you moving? Sun exposure, everything we've been talking about. So that's first and foremost. Okay, are they doing that? Yeah, if you're younger, can you do, all the testosterone boosters and this and that? It's not going to hurt anything. There's some data out there. I think they're kind of mixed. I think it'll move the needle, but not some guys it will move it more. But for the most part, it's like a little bit, but nothing great. But I know some people that have had great success with it. So is it going to hurt anything? Probably not. If you're a young guy, can you try something like Shilajit, ashwagandha, etc.? Great. Yeah, absolutely. However, most guys, I think, as they find, especially as we get older and in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, we're all going to get some hormonal decline as we age, unfortunately. And then dealing with the toxic world we live in, it's at some point it's going to be inevitable. So I think always starting with everything else first, and then at some point, does somebody need to optimize their testosterone with some hormonal treatment? Yeah, more than likely, that's probably what's going to happen with most people. So again, try the natural stuff. Now, if they're a younger guy, they say they're in their 40s, or if there's any question of having children, I always try to save testosterone for later. So start with something like Clomid or HCG or one of these other modalities that's going to boost testosterone naturally, maintain their fertility. And I've had a lot of success with that with some of my patients. I did it myself for some time, and they can definitely work. Now, at some point, if that stops working or they don't have success with it, or they just don't like how they feel on it, then we can graduate to testosterone. I don't like to do it right out of the gate, because then I feel like I like to have options. I'm a former ER doctor. I always like to think 3 steps ahead. Like, this doesn't work, then let's do this. If that doesn't work, let's do this. So start with that. If that doesn't work, or we get to that point, okay, well, now we go to testosterone. So do testosterone replacement therapy, obviously with injectable testosterone or a compounded cream. They work fantastic. Now there's the new oral form, the Kaisertrex, et cetera, that can do it as an oral formulation, which I've had some pretty good success with. So now there's a few more options out there for men. But that's kind of my progression, start with the lifestyle, the natural stuff, pre-test, hormonal optimization, then move on to testosterone. So that's kind of like a standard progression for most guys. And there's little tweaks here and there, little things we could do, peptides and stuff like that. But that's kind of the general progression.
Got a couple follow-up questions for you, but I'm going to dump the testosterone protocol. Natural approaches, ashwagandha, as you said, magnesium, zinc, B6, tribulus. Not sure how you feel about that. Fish oils, DHEA, acetyl L-carnitine, creatine, BPC 157. Here is a question that every guy comes in who's going to take TRT. They ask me, if I go on TRT, do I have to stay on it for life?
I hear that a lot too. I always say no, you don't have to. However, most guys I find, once they get to that point where they need it and they have to do it to optimize themselves, they're not going to want to stop. Why would you? Now, will it, the follow-up question is always, well, doc, won't my body stop making it on its own? I say, well, yeah, it will. If you do it for a certain amount of time, it will stop. But if you're already down here, you're not making much, what are you missing out on? You know what I mean? If you're like on a scale of 0 to 10, you're a 1, yeah, you could stop. Why would you stop? If you're not making enough to having a clinical effect anyway. So what's the harm? In shutting it down further. But you could stop at any time, and you can always do a reboot. Let it go back to where it would be. But if you start up here and you're 40 and you optimize it for a while, then you stop it, you're just going to go back down to where you would have been at that age anyway. So it'll just revert to normal. So you can totally stop at any time. But most guys are like, well, I feel great. Why would I? So
rapid fire, fact or fiction. Will I get muscular if I take TRT? Obviously, we're talking about males right now.
Fact, if you're doing all the right stuff, eating, lifting, stuff like that, you can't just sit on the couch eating bonbons and get big, right? But
fact or fiction, if I take testosterone, will my hair thin?
Fiction.
Fact or fiction, will my prostate grow?
Fiction.
Fact or fiction, will my libido improve?
Typically fact, yes.
Well, you just sold half of America on it. I just saw the survey, and it said 93.2 million Americans said that if my libido goes, I'm going to take TRT. Fact or fiction, will my mood change?
That's a tough one. I would say fiction.
What is the top level number you would want somebody to attain? I know it's generic, it's not individual, in a testosterone blood serum test.
There really isn't a magic number. It's just where you feel good at, but in general, I want them to be the upper third. So most guys are feeling pretty good anywhere between 600 and 1,000, somewhere in that range.
80% of your immune cells are in your gut. It has its own nervous system called the enteric nervous system. We converse probably every week on this podcast about how improving gut health will improve overall health. Everybody's got a different approach. Begs the question, what's your approach to improving gut health?
Yeah, it's a big one. I agree. I see so many people with gut issues. So number one is just removing any offending agents, right? Some people are unknowingly doing stuff that bothers them. Maybe they're eating too many seed oils or, processed foods. They don't realize until they kind of do an audit or look at themselves. Oh yeah, I am eating, this piece of processed junk every day. I didn't realize it or whatever. Stress reduction, of course. But for me, I always like to start with whole food, right? Do you give your body what it needs? And so a whole food diet and like prebiotics, using prebiotics like resistant starches, more fibers, berries, polyphenols, etc. usually does a great way to get your body microbiome, giving it the microbiome what it needs to take care of itself. And if that doesn't work, then of course we could do other things, whether it's probiotics, things like butyrate or tributrin, lactulose, peptides that can help with gut health, or if heaven forbid somebody has a really bad dysbiosis, we may need to do like a gut protocol, like kill the bad bugs, feed the good bugs, with supplements, nutraceuticals, antibiotics, things like that. But typically by feeding the good bacteria, we can turn around, feeding the Akkermansia, the bifidobacteria, et cetera, with, like I said, polyphenols and fibers and things. Usually that can turn around. But sometimes I've had a lot of people with some crazy stuff, whether it's mold or an infection, we have to do like a more advanced protocol for like a month or two to really reboot it.
Back to fiction. Hey, Dr. Fate, if I take probiotic, will that fix and figure out everything I need in my gut?
Probably a fiction, usually not.
Not good enough, pre and probiotics. Here's a more delving question. What's the number one thing that you see that patients do wrong before coming in your office to help themselves lose weight and gain muscle?
That's a tough one. I would say most people are doing nowadays like too much restriction, like too much fasting or too extreme stuff. Like they're doing these crazy extreme diets or they're doing it for way too long. I've been doing keto for 3 years or carnivore for 8 months or something, or I'm fasting 24 fast 3 times a week or whatever, something off kilter.
So my buddy's listening and he's writing this all down. And he said, Rob, at the end of every podcast, I need one thing to chew on to make my life better, to take a step forward. Now, I'm going to also give you the caveat that he's now improving his tennis game. So what would you suggest? Just give him the one thing. He'll do it.
We're improving his tennis game or just living better in general.
Well, we'll start with living better in general, which will definitely, segue into a better tennis outcome.
Gotcha. Uh, we talked about sleep. I think focusing on your circadian rhythm and breath work, I think that gets neglected a lot because that can improve so many things. Just nobody breathes properly. If you do a bolt test or something like that, you can really see how bad it is, right? Most of us are not doing abdominal breathing. We're breathing too quickly. It's affecting our sympathetic tone. It's affecting our sleep. It's affecting our digesting, our performance. So I think just something that anybody can do and it's free. Just focusing on your breath work, getting outside and focusing on your breathing multiple times a day can do wonders and it's free.
You're so correct about the breathing, especially expired air. 70% of our toxins are removed from expired air.
Yeah.
84% of fat is burned to CO2 is removed through expired air. So one of the biggest weight loss hacks that I share with my patients is learning how to breathe and breathe more appropriately. Uh, Give me the number one food that you would remove to raise testosterone, and give me the number one food that you would add to increase testosterone.
I think most people are pretty aware of, protein, healthy fats. Everybody's doing low carb. I'm more of a high carb guy. I think, don't fear the carbs. I think a lot of guys just need to add more healthy carbs back in and they'll feel a hell of a lot better. Removing, that's a tough one too. Alcohol is probably up there. Seed oils. Those are
So
probably
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm happy that you said that because that's one of my bane of existence. We have a lot of influencers saying there's no data to indicate human clinical trials to indicate that processed seed oils are deleterious. They're in omega-6, everybody. We have enough omega-6s. So I'm
definitely.
excited that you mentioned that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The
It's a
floor is
big
yours now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's a big one for sure. I think seed oils and obviously anything that's processed chemical, blah, blah, blah. Most people know that. But the problem is they're sneaky. You got to read the labels and everything. They sneak stuff in
Mhm.
all the time. And it's like, oh, this sounds healthy. And then line three of the ingredients, like, oh, genetically modified or, canola oil or whatever. You ideally you shouldn't have to read ingredients, right? It's food, right? Oh, this is an
Right.
avocado or whatever. But, it is what it is.
We are, as the human species, the smartest species in the world. We're able to make our own food supply. Unfortunately, we are the dumb enough to consume it as well.
For
Maybe
sure.
I should put that on a bumper sticker if I can shorten it up.
Love that. I love
So
that.
let's close it up. Change in administration. We're not talking politics. Change in outlook on healthcare. Where do you see the seed that's being planted, the turnaround, the reversal, if you will? Where do you see America's health going in the next 5 years?
Man, I love that question. And based on what they're trying to do right now, I think we're moving in a good direction. I think the biggest thing is, unfortunately, the politics and economics is a huge role, and I get that out, get the big pharma toolbox out of get their hands out of the kitty jar or whatever, the cookie jar. Let's get back to natural health, man. Getting outside, eating real food, get rid of the chemical processed crap, the glyphosate, get us back to eating real food, that's growing outside and getting outside. And I think if we can continue that trajectory, I think we'll be in a much better place. But like you said, we've made this world, we've made the food that we eat worse. We've affected things in a very deleterious fashion. So I think if we need to we need to pull that back a little bit and let nature do its thing and get back to nature. I think if we can continue that, I think we'll be in a good place.
As Dr. Jacqueline once said, if man makes it, I won't eat it. If God gives it, it's a gift.
Right?
Dr. Eric Fate, it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much. We
Sure.
need to do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you much. I appreciate it. Great questions and I appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure. Dr. Rob Silver and Dr. Eric Fate, Proven Health Alternatives.